dancers, welcome back to season 3 of Broche Banter. I'm Julie, your host. Today we have a great episode with Kelsey and Jessica, the co-founders of the Facet Dance Collective, which is an adult dance collective for dancers of all bodies, identities, and backgrounds. Their next production is an adaptation of the classic Nutcracker story called The Garden of Dreams. For their first production, the in-person cast is already set, but they do have space in their virtual portion. So if you'd like to join and be a part of this first beautiful production of The Garden of Dreams, be sure to get in touch with the Facet Dance Collective. I'll have all the links in the podcast notes. This conversation, we get into a lot of different topics, so I've split it up into 2 episodes. On part 1, we'll be talking about what performing means to Kelsey and Jessica, what drove them to meet and to create the Facet Dance Collective together. Then in part 2, we really dive into the Facet Dance Collective. We talk about opportunities for adult performers and what they're creating with their new dance collective. All right, dancers, with that, I hope you enjoy this 2-part episode with Jessica and Kelsey of the Facet Dance Collective. All right, welcome back to Broche Banter. I'm so excited to have today the fabulous guests, Kelsey and Jessica, the founders of the Facet Dance Collective. You know them both already from the podcast, and we're going to dive into what they have created together for the dance and ballet community. So welcome, Jessica. Welcome, Kelsey. I'm so excited to get to chat with you both today.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, really excited.
So let's start off with Facet Dance Collective. What is the Facet Dance Collective? It's very new. You just had your first show. So what is it? What have we brought into the world here?
Right. So basically, we are a group that is providing performing opportunities for adults. So we really want to further the ability for dancers to perform, especially in our home state, which is Arkansas. So it was very serendipitous. Kelsey and I met through IABF, and we made connections that she was going to be moving to the northwest corner of Arkansas. I'm here on the northeast corner. And we decided, kind of almost as a joke at first, like, oh, we should form like our own company or something. And then we started talking about it, and it's like, oh, we should really do something. And here we are. Kelsey, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would say, like, from both of our experiences at IBF in particular were very magical and kind of brought up this supercharged dreaming kind of state for both of us.
Yeah.
And we joke that, like, how did we not know each other before this? Because we're like the same person, just in different fonts. But when we were at IBF, just the opportunity to perform in that space of adults performing of all levels, and the special artists you have in adult performers, of how much life experience they bring to their art, is rather incredible. And there just are not opportunities for that outside. There's just not easy ways to get in a production, have a space where you could choreograph a solo, learn a solo, dance in a group piece, especially in Arkansas, which we both have struggled in Arkansas to find those areas to perform. But we just think it's so valuable for the community to see, but also so valuable for the dancers to have the opportunity to grow as artists. Being a dancer is not just about being in class, although that is a huge part of being a dancer, and we love that part. We also love getting to share ourselves and our stories with the community. And we wanted to put something together that gave that opportunity to people in a very accessible way.
And what makes it, it's challenging to get on the stage. It's challenging to put yourself out there and get into the stage. What do you feel makes it accessible for a person to think like, okay, I'm going to get on the stage. I'm going to do it. I'm going to put myself out there. That's going to be, what do you think, Kelsey? What is that to you? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think we have wrestled with that and how we've created the collective of figuring out all the different ways adults have barriers to getting on stage. And we've made a couple missteps along the way that now we know more, so we can correct them. But I think it's complicated. I don't think it's really clear why someone has a barrier to the stage, because it's so individual and vulnerable to each person. I mean, there are the practical barriers of, is there a stage? Is there the funding? Is there like a company that, or an organization that will let you as an adult be on their stage production? Those are the easy barriers for us to take down and be like, we're just for adults. We're going to find a theater. We're going to put together a dance. we're going to say, yes, you can be in this. Those
Right.
are the easy barriers to overcome in some ways, but also they're not easy because there is a lot of work that goes into like coming up with a production, finding the space, doing the
Yeah.
music licensing. Like that could be a whole podcast of what do you do to start a dance collective? Because we learn
Yeah.
so much.
So much. Putting on a show is definitely its own amount, but it's very fixed and finite. It's not like the vulnerabilities, which are, like you said, complicated. Those are, putting on a show is hard, but it's rote in a sense once you kind of get the hang of what you're doing.
I think the initial stage moment is the most important barrier to overcome for an adult. If you can get them on stage, it becomes much easier for them to believe they can get on stage again.
Hmm.
And so the more we can help that access point into a performance, I think the more adults feel comfortable to perform. It's almost like asking adults to play, like in my work as a therapist, asking an adult to play, they hate me. They're like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, let's just try it together and see what happens. Once we do it once, they're like, oh, this is like not that big of a barrier. I've done it. But getting that adult on the stage for the first time is very hard because we have a whole life of insecurity, a whole life of like, I need to be perfect to put something out. I need to put out something that's good quality. I can't be a beginner at something.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, the beginners on stage sometimes have the most impactful art that you might see in a show. And they might not have the technique of the professionals, but they're telling a story with their whole body. You're seeing such an inspiring moment of someone who is learning something new as an adult, and the bravery and courage of being on stage, like that speaks volumes to an audience member. But as a performer, it just feels super vulnerable and scary. And so if you can help an adult feel confident and believed and empowered to get on that stage even as a beginner, I think that's one of the pieces to unlock performance for adults.
Yeah, that's a huge struggle we have at the International Adult Ballet Festival too, where people have an idea that they want to perform, but then when it actually comes to getting out there on stage, it's very, very scary. It's very difficult for somebody to decide to come to such an event that has a stage component to it, because it's not only, deciding to put yourself out there, fly somewhere to be in a program and meet new people, which is already scary in and of itself, but then to decide to step out and put yourself out there onto the stage, right? While it is an incredible experience, it is very complicated to feel all those feelings, and to every step of the way feel those feelings and keep saying yes and not, as rehearsal process goes on, not decide to drop out or to step out, or as you start getting overwhelmed, not decide to step back from it. There's a lot of yeses that have to go along the way to lead up to that particular stage moment. So it's very, I'm very, very curious to hear more from you guys about what you've learned from it too, because it's such a incredible opportunity, and yet so difficult and so scary to take and to walk out there on the stage. Jessica, do you have anything else you'd add into that bit too?
I'll just share an anecdote from my adult ballet class that I teach separate from Facet here in Jonesboro. We recently had a showcase that the adults were wanted to perform in, and I was so excited. One of them had dreamed of it, and she was, one of the most enthusiastic when I asked them, would you want to put some choreography together? And she's like, yes, absolutely. I want to get on stage. I want a costume. I want to wear a tutu one day. I'm like, perfect. You're right up my alley. I'm so excited for you. But right before we got on stage, I could just see the fear and the nerves start to take hold. And it was a really beautiful moment. My other students surrounded her with support and gave encouragement. And I told them all, I said, well, if you think about it, there might be someone out there in that audience that is inspired by what you're doing. There no doubt will be someone that's like, I am just in awe of what you're able to share. There's someone that's going to be out there that's like, I want to do that too. And it's just this really ripple effect. And sometimes I think that can help mitigate their nerves and the sense that you're going to feel the fear and do it anyway, like the saying says. But that can help get you over that sense of performance anxiety, or what if I'm not good enough, or all these doubts that are in our adult minds. It really just helps to think of how you can connect because that's all performing is. It's human connection. And we don't always have a lot of that, unfortunately, in our society. So I think dance is a really healthy outlet for that. And so I would just say that just finding your personal why to get on stage is very important, because it's going to be different for everyone. But once you find it and once you tap into that and are able to share that on the stage, the audience knows and they're very inspired. That's why, Kelsey was talking about, the technique doesn't always make the performance. It's because of that connection. I think that's really special.
I got an email recently. It's very similar to your anecdote. I got an email recently from one of our students here at Broche, and she said that she's recently began ballet and she fell in love with ballet, and she's got her mom a membership for Mother's Day and wants her mom to join in with her. And this is what she wrote to me in an email. She wrote, my mom visited me recently and I showed her a couple of the IABF performances from 2023. She was completely moved to tears. Thank you for making ballet seem totally doable. Just incredible.
I love that. Yeah, that's part of our mission too. The more of us there are, the more people we will reach. It's exciting.
Yeah, it made me think of, I think, Julie, one thing you do really well at IABF is you also get on stage.
Yes.
And I think unintentionally we did that with our first production, and that both Jessica and I were in both group dances. We had a solo that our dancers in the collective for the first performance knew we were taking the risk with them, that we were out there with them, that they could rely on us to be there in the moment of anxiety or fear. And that might change as we go forward. Like ideally, I, as the choreographer, am not in the group pieces. That presents its own challenge. But like we are still going to be on stage with our dancers, because that's one of the things we want people to see, is that there's not necessarily this so defined line between teacher and dancer, or choreographer and artist, or director and core member. Like there's much more collaboration and equity throughout the whole process than maybe they even understand could be possible.
Wow, that's so funny that you say that, Kelsey, because in the first year when I decided to do a solo and decided to be in the Swan Lake piece, I was like feeling kind of selfish about it. I was like, oh, you're taking somebody else's stage time, like you're taking somebody else's spot on stage. And then I was like, I don't know, this was a lot of work to put on. I kind of want to have fun too. I decided to go up on stage. So it's actually really funny to hear from your guys' perspective that can be empowering, that I'm out there taking a risk with you guys. Whereas like that was my own personal doubt for getting on the stage that time, was like that it was, you're the organizer, you shouldn't be allowed to have stage time or whatever. And then I just decided to take the stage time because I love the stage too. And there's nowhere else for me to perform. So I was like, I want to do it too. It's only 3 minutes. We can do it. So I think like you guys said, everyone has their own personal why and their own complicated things, and setting those examples and leading by example can really show that you can be scared too. I mean, anyone who was in the wings with me before I went out to give my speech knows that I was like nervous, like jumping up and down, like trying to get rid of the nerves. And like, you just see other people be nervous and do it anyways. And that kind of helps you kind of go beyond that by yourself. You see it done. You see someone else do it. So
it's funny you say that, because I have such beautiful memories of, in the Swan Lake piece at IBF, I was on your side, and I have such clear memories and that I hold on to. I was like, wow, that was a really inspiring moment where we like caught eyes in the middle of that. And I was like, oh, this is so magical. I'm so glad Julie got on stage with us.
Those moments really are magical, dancing with people. There is something about solo, and I'm curious what your experiences are with solo versus group. For the next about 3 weeks after the first year of festival, all of my dreams when I was sleeping was of Swan Lake, and I could like see Solange across the stage, and I could see you guys across the stage, and it was just this magical like white memory that was very clear. Whereas the solo is a very different experience. You don't have that sort of connectedness with each other. You connect with the audience a lot more, but you don't connect with the other people on the stage. What's been your experiences with your own personal solos versus group, and with feedback from your adults of solo versus group?
I think, you can go, Kelsey.
You can go first, Jessica.
Oh, okay. I think for me, it's interesting because I grew up performing, and I did group pieces until I was 12. And I really enjoyed the teamwork aspect of dancing in a group. And like there were inside jokes that were formed by things that happened on the stage, little mishaps and things. And it really, I guess, looking at that helped me learn like, oh, it's okay to make mistakes. Like everyone does it. That's part of dancing in a group. But there's like a sensation when you're in a group, especially like at IABF or, with Facet, there were moments on stage where we were just like breathing and doing very simple movements. But that, I mean, like I get chills thinking about it.
It's just, just like imagining it.
There's nothing like it. Sharing that moment with others, and it's really transcendental and really just transcends words. That experience. So that's what I really enjoy about the group. I like the collaborative rehearsal process, like it's like hour 3 and we're all getting a little silly and having fun with it. And, there's just different things that are different than, dancing alone. But I will say I do enjoy performing solo as well. I really, it's funny. I am not a person that likes a lot of personal attention in my everyday life. I recently presented to Rotary Club for Facet, and the idea of speaking in front of people, I got really nervous. Thankfully, I knew a lot of people there, so I had connections, but I was like, I had to really pep myself up. But like going on stage, I'm like, yeah, these people are going to pay attention to me and watch me. And it's like this empowering experience. And it's funny. Like I take on an alter ego or something.
Yeah.
But
I think that's very common. Yeah. A performing version of yourself.
I think it's helpful to, I'm a total bunhead. If I'm gonna perform like a solo, I really enjoy classical ballet, and so I have a character that I get to portray, and I think getting to share that with the audience is something that's a little different there too, because I have like it's just me on stage. I get to decide how I want to convey that character, but it's the way I'm able to connect to my own personal experiences and connect that to a character, connect it to the movement and the music, and then present that to the audience is really, really cool to get to have that, I guess, degree of autonomy with how I express myself. So, with the group, it's more about the team and the collaboration and the sharing the moment. And then I really think solo performing is about expression for me.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I would probably talk about it from 2 different perspectives. One, my personal experience on stage, but then 2, my experience as the choreographer, because I feel like those inform how I perform in different ways, but also are kind of linked together. So personally, I love dancing in a group because there is a connection without words that is really powerful. And as a neurodivergent person in the world, words and social things can be kind of difficult for me. Feeling connected to people through social cues or just talking can sometimes be really difficult. But when I connect through someone with movement, it feels very real and like it honors who I am as a person. And it's just this like, I feel so grounded and rooted in myself when I'm dancing with other people, no matter what style it is. And I just find that is like so filling to my whole life. Solo wise, I view solos as a chance to kind of wrestle with my own story and then find a way to share it with others. So last time I was on the podcast, we talked a lot about struggling to tell my story with words and finding a way to do that through movement. And I found that's just very true with my life as a whole. I often don't have words until afterwards, but I can often find a way to say, oh, this is what I'm feeling through movement. And when I am able to pick, like my solos for IBF have been a really good example of this, of here's the story I want to tell, here's the song. My journey through choreographing or getting choreographed on, rehearsing is all a journey of like self-acceptance and vulnerability and growth and kind of knowing myself more. And then that final moment of putting it on stage, it's no longer about it being perfect. It's no longer about hitting everything. It's about being true to everything I've learned about myself in that process and giving other people the opportunity to see me. because I am a fairly guarded person most of the time. And so to like open those doors, to let those barriers down and say, hey, I can give you this gift, and also risk saying, like, are you going to love me back kind of thing. That's how I view solos for me. From a choreographer standpoint, it was super interesting to do group work versus solos and duets because we had a pretty good mix of them for our first show. I really enjoy, from a teacher standpoint, working on solos with people because I get to really dig into how do you best receive feedback? Like, what kind of metaphors work in your body? How do I choreograph on you in a way that pulls out your strengths but still challenges you and like pushes you just enough? And I find that process really fun, and kind of forming that relationship with the dancer one on one. I feel like I thrive there. For the group, it feels very different because I kind of had to set the choreography and then figure out, like, as a group, how are we going to work through this? What are the small shifts that might need to be made, because as a group this either doesn't look good or we can't do this well as a group. um, so I found managing groups were actually much harder than managing the solos from a teacher perspective, but I found the process went much deeper with the group, especially towards the end as we got more comfortable with each other, that there was that community empowerment that was happening between dancers, that just me having a group dance facilitated that naturally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, so many layers, so many, I guess, facets, as you, if we could use a pun there. Kind of thinking about that you both created this Facet Dance Collective together. I mean, it's one thing to go from just joking with each other in a summer program where you could just leave and say bye. Because, for anyone listening, the International Adult Ballet Festival, we travel in together. We spend the week together in the hotel and we perform, and then we leave and go home. So it's one thing to just be joking with each other during the week when you're there. And it's another thing to get back home and to put in the work. I mean, you both have jobs, you both have work. I know you care for animals, you care for people in your community. So what was it that actually led you to put in the effort required to do this? And I know how much effort it is to put on a show, and you did it. What was the driving force? What was your why for doing this? Maybe you each have your own whys. Let's hear yours, Jessica.
I think really just coming off of the experience of IABF and how uplifting and magical, I don't know what words I really want to use there, but just feeling that sense of this is where I belong. It was very important, and keeping that not just for myself, finding a spot where I feel like I belong 100%, and I'm able to be myself 100%, but it is worth it to create a space to allow other adult dancers to be completely themselves and to have that space set aside for them. I also perform with teenagers. It's kind of fun. I dance with them, I teach them. And so it creates a different kind of community where I'm able to be a role model. But I really found that kind of adult friendship community lacking in my life. And creating this space with Facet has helped fill that gap. And it's encouraged me to find other people to participate for that reason. That makes the work worthwhile to know that it's almost like a calling in a way, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think my why is pretty similar to Jessica's, in that I walked out of IABF with so much energy in ways that like empowered me that I could create something more than I believed I could. I think in part it's watching you, Julie, create something that just didn't exist. And in part it's like the shared energy of being in a totally adult ballet space in person, which I get this from the online classes too. But I have no other spaces in my life that are all adult dance. Like, that has never been an option for me until the pandemic and finding Broche Ballet. That what happens in those spaces serves a need that's different. And I walked out knowing like I could create that for other people. And then I had a few experiences in the fall that were like pretty terrible experiences of being involved in a production and being told like, yeah, you can be as an adult, but then not really being treated as a full cast member. And that sort of reaffirmed me that it is actually important to build some of these adult only spaces for dance. Because it is a struggle of saying like, okay, if I'm the one creating it, like, is this space still for me too? Because it's the both and. Like, I want this space to just exist so that I can participate in it, but it doesn't exist. So if I create it, that also changes my role within the space too. And so coming to acceptance of it's okay to create the space and let that be filling to me than needing for the space to be for me. And I think it helps that I have those kind of dual passions of not only dancing and performing, but the creating and choreographing, because this gives me the opportunity to choreograph and really dig into like, how do I grow as a choreographer? How do I grow as a director? How do I best teach a dancer, kind of meet them where they're at?
Yeah, those spaces are so important in ways that until you have them, you can't feel the importance because you haven't had them. You haven't had a space where you feel, like you said, Jessica, like that, where you belong or where you're energized or where you're, inspired to make your own thing from that, right? The energy and the empowerment to go through it, where I think there's a lot of merit to having the mixed age groups and to have the kids being able to see the adults dancing and the adults being able to see the kids dancing and all of that stuff. But I think that when it comes to actually supporting adults in their storytelling and in their performing, I find that having it separate almost gives the adults permission. I don't know if any of you have experienced this or experienced this at all, but I find that in performing, where I've performed singing with kids and I was on stage, and then the kids would sing before or after me, I feel almost like that I'm, it's for kids. I'm taking something from it. I don't belong here. I'm the same age as the parents. I should be taking care of kids and not doing this on stage. Or like, it kind of gives you some strangeness of taking up the space that's designed to foster childhood development. And it's like, this is meant for these kids to learn how to sing. This is a childhood development type of a thing versus like me sharing my life story and like getting really vulnerable with these 6-year-olds around. Like, it's not really, it doesn't really feel like the space for me to tell my hero's journey that I'm trying to tell, So I don't know if you've had that experience with adults performing with kids at all, or if that's just a me thing. What do you guys think?
No, absolutely. I've experienced the same thing. Even to the point where I'll second guess myself, like, okay, should I audition for the Nutcracker if I'm going to take a role from a teenager that's going to quit dancing when they turn 18? It's kind of this conundrum. And finally, I've realized that, well, they can keep dancing. They don't have to choose to stop. There's this preconceived mindset that ballet or dance in general is for kids, and that you do it while you're growing up, and then you turn 18, and then it's like you graduate high school, you have your last recital, goodbye, you never think of it again. And it is bizarre to me because it's always been such a passion of mine. Like, why would you just leave that? So yeah, that's part of it. But then also making Facet, what's the word I want to use? Like outward reaching, but really being upfront about you belong here. Because I do feel like I belong in those spaces with the kids. Sometimes I doubt it, but it's not like I'm being directly encouraged and saying, this is your place. Yeah. And so having that opportunity with Facet to be like, no, this is for me. I can say that without a doubt. And I can say, this is for you to the other adult dancers without a doubt. There's nothing, in your mind like, oh, am I taking this from someone? It's like, no, you're a part of this. And that's been very healing for me.
Yeah, I would say absolutely also. I think multi-generational spaces in dance are really important, but they work because there's kid-only spaces. The multi-generational spaces don't work because there's adult-only spaces. Like, those are the only spaces adults are really allowed in. So the kids have another option. They have that supplement place. So when we have to say like, okay, our boundary is adults only, it's because we're creating a space that doesn't already exist. Because as an adult, like when I started dancing, I was 23 or 24, but I still looked really young. So it was fine because they just thought I was a teenager, and it was fine to
Same.
be in the teenage dances because no one could tell I was an adult. But now that I'm 30, it feels very different. Like I was in a point piece with 10-year-olds at my recital this spring, and that was super awkward, but I got up on that stage and I had the best stage presence of any of them because they're 10. Like their stage presence is different at 10 than mine is at 30.
Right.
But would I repeat that experience? Probably not, because it actually felt really awkward and like the space isn't made for me, so I don't fit in it. But that is the place where I can get that in-person point center work. That is my only option. So it's either I dance with 10-year-olds or I don't get to do point center work as much. And that's a really hard choice to be put in a position of. There's another funny story of we were telling, what was the story? The story was Prodigal Son story. And so you have like a prostitute dance, right? So we had the main character was actually a teen boy. And then the ballet class I was in was the prostitutes. And he was supposed to be flirting with all of us. Okay, so this is a minor boy, and I'm 27. And I was like, I can't be in this dance. Like, I know I want to be in this dance and like I want to be on stage, but this is inappropriate. Like he's a minor and I'm an adult. Like this is not a boundary or an ethic we should cross. And no one thought of that until I said it. Like the director was totally going to put me in that dance because they weren't thinking like, oh, this is actually inappropriate, because the space is made for kids and they don't know how to treat you when you're the only adult in the space. They're like, yeah, you're in the class, you get to be in the dance, but it's not always that simple. And so creating a space where those kind of conflicts don't come up and that the adult doesn't have to feel responsible for catching those conflicts.
Right. Or for caring for the kids in some way, right? There's a bit of a caretaking role that ends up taking place when you're an adult in the room with the children.
Especially when you're a PT.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a mental health therapist. Like the amount of times in the teen class, I become the like mentor because I'm the safe person they can talk to. And that can get kind of weird too, because it's like, I'm a student in this class. What are their parents thinking? What's the studio thinking of these roles of like, I'm automatically an adult in the class. So if something is going on in the class and I either say something or don't say something, that speaks more to, is this okay, than if I'm not in the room and something doesn't get said. So like I've had a lot of times where I'm the only adult in the room and a teacher does something that is very inappropriate or says something to a young dancer that I'm like, that is not okay. It's very harmful. And if I choose not to say something, that speaks to all those teenagers in the room that is okay. Like an adult witnessed this and they think it's okay. But if I do speak about it, then that disrupts my whole class experience. And so it puts me in this double bind of like, I always choose to say something because that's where I sit value-wise. But it also means I've gotten basically told not to come back to certain spaces because I was calling out inappropriate behavior in a very professional, appropriate way. But that a lot of, especially ballet and like pre-professional environments, they don't have room for adults because we bring in challenges and like poke at things that they just want to let lie under the surface.
It's a very different space, the adults versus the kids. It really is. And it's amazing that you have put in the work to create this space for the adults. All right, dancers, that was the first part of the episode on the Facet Dance Collective with Kelsey and Jessica. If you are interested in learning more about their production or keeping in touch with them, find them online at facetdancecollective.com. I look forward to seeing you in part 2 of their awesome episode.